In 2001, Zoolander was perfecting his blue steel look. Jack Bauer was showing all of us how he could hold his bladder and not go to the bathroom for 24 consecutive hours while fighting terrorists. But most importantly, 2001 was Topps' 50th anniversary. Happy Hobby, I'm David Guns. Once again, we are working with sports card collectors that are dealing with a limited budget. That's what we do here at this channel, so make sure you subscribe if that's what you're into. Today, we're talking about the top 10 most valuable-ish cards from the 2001 Topps base series. And I say most valuable-ish because once we got into the 2000s, the range of prices on graded cards really got kind of a little random, a little up and down, and it's tough to really lock in what those values are because the rookie cards were really the only ones getting graded. So a lot of these other veteran cards weren't getting graded like they were in the 70s or the 60s or even in the 80s. So there's a different level for those cards. The rookie cards we can lock in on though. Now remember, in this series that we're doing top 10 of every year. We're going to say pre-2000 from going forward. Every year of Topps issues every one of their Topps baseball card base sets. We're giving the top 10 most valuable cards. We've already done 1960. We've done 1978, 2001 right now. We're going to hit the 80s pretty soon. 1984 is the next set that we're going to be looking at, so stay tuned for that. But also stay tuned because at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a little David Ortiz trivia nugget. You're not going to want to miss it. Definitely stay to the end. And now remember, this series is also no parallels, no autographs, no error card. This is just the base cards in that set. And so just to put 2001 Topps series into perspective, in 2000, the preceding season, which all the photographs are of on the 2001 set, 2000, we're coming off the Subway Series between the Mets and the Yankees. We're still deep into the steroids era. As a matter of fact, in the year 2000, more home runs were hit in that year than any year before it. Now, when we're talking about the 2001 Topps set, this is the first year when Topps started doing their gold parallel with a serial number, with a sequence up to 2001, because it was the year 2001, and that was their way of celebrating the 50th anniversary. So it's parallel numbered cards. Now, this set in general isn't really that attractive, in my opinion. The design isn't that great. And because it had the non-white borders, it was tough to get high grades and stuff because there was a lot of chipping and paper loss because the gloss on these cards led to a lot of bricking. That's when cards stick together. When they're pressed together for long periods of time, they kind of just mold into one big brick, which I heard if you put them in the freezer, that'll help. But it's just a tip from me to you. But this was right during the bricking era, if you will. Something else to know about that set was there was no card number 7 issued. That was actually a card that was removed in honor of Mickey Mantle, who had passed earlier. So card number 7, not in the set. Now remember, when we do this series, we talk about collector's grade. That's one number above the decade for the grade. So in this case, it's a 2001 set, so you're not going to get above. So this is just PSA 10s that we're talking about for the values of these cards. And like I said, the values are a little iffy, so don't lock me in on this is exactly what the value is when you go to buy one. All right, so let's get started. But first, before we talk about the 2001 base set, the series, the first 2 series basically, I want to first touch on the Topps traded set because the 2 big cards in that set don't make it into this list only because they're in the traded set, so it's a little different. But I wanted to let you know the Albert Pujols rookie card, absolutely the best card you could get out of this entire 2001 season. And then also the Albert Pujols and Ichiro rookie combo card, which you see sometimes. That's also one of the most valuable. But again, those are from the Topps traded set. All right, so let's get into it. The number 1 most valuable card in the Topps 2001 set, Ichiro Suzuki. We just mentioned him about the traded set, but his first card came in this 2001 Topps set. Now, he played 28 seasons of professional baseball, And in 2001, it was his first year of winning 2 back-to-back AL batting titles. He also won the American League MVP. He also won the American League Rookie of the Year title, joining Fred Lynn as the only 2 guys to win both the Rookie of the Year and the MVP in the same season. Number 2, Ken Griffey Jr. with the Reds. Of course, he was a beloved player, and going back from Seattle to the Reds, they loved him in Cincinnati because his father played there. Now, you'll notice the price on this is quite high, but it's the only price I could find on a PSA 10 sold for that card. So I'm not going to put him above the Ichiro. I know that card's not more valuable than the Ichiro card, so he's number 2 in this list. Number 3 on the list is Tony Gwynn. Now, this list, you'll notice, has a ton of great 80s players that are now kind of winding down their careers. In this case, Tony Gwynn, along with Cal Ripken Jr., were in their retirement tour, basically. And so here, he was the NL batting champion 8 different times. He was the NL batting champion so many times that they now name the National League's batting champion award after him, the Tony Gwynn Award. Number 4, Roger Clemens. Now, this was Roger Clemens' 3rd season with the Yankees. He'd go on to win 20 games with them. He'd also go on to win his 6th Cy Young Award. That's pretty amazing. You think about the junk wax era and the steroids era. Collectors of his cards would have been much better off if Roger Clemens played back in the 60s. Number 5, Derek Jeter, the captain. Now, he was still on the front 9 of his career at this point, but he had already won 3 World Series titles when this card came out. And number 6, as we mentioned earlier, Cal Ripken Jr. Now, this was his final season in the majors as well, after being named an All-Star 19 different times. That's pretty amazing. Number 7, Rickey Henderson. Now, this was when Rickey was with the Seattle Mariners. Can you imagine that dugout with Rickey Henderson and Ichiro Suzuki? I imagine like Rickey giving Ichiro some tips on stealing bases in the majors, but I often wonder, like, did Ichiro understand when Rickey spoke about Rickey in the 3rd person? Like, here's what Rickey would do in this situation. I don't know if he would. And number 8, of course, Frank Thomas. Now, in 2001, he actually only played 20 games because of injury. But a year previous, in 2000, he knocked in 143 RBIs. Number 9, David Ortiz. Big Papi with the Minnesota Twins. Just hearing the words Big Papi and Twins in the same sense just kind of makes me cringe just thinking of whichever baseball mother out there would have given birth to a set of twins like Big Papi. But this was when he was still dwelling in a little obscurity with the Twins at this point before he got traded to the Red Sox. Don't forget, at the end of this video, we're going to give you a nice little Big Papi trivia. And number 10, talking steroids, got to talk about Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds, one of the all-time greatest hitters, much less sluggers, one of the greatest hitters of all time. And while this 2001 set was based on the 2000 season, Barry Bonds' 2001 season was one of the greatest all-time offensive displays in MLB history, with 73 home runs hit and an OPS of 1.379. Absolutely fantastic. So some other great cards to consider. Really, these were all the big 90s names, you know, like Pedro Martinez, Chipper Jones, Greg Maddux, Mike Piazza, Ivan Rodriguez, Alex Rodriguez. Great cards in this set, but they just weren't quite as valuable as the other cards we listed. All right, so you stuck around to the end. Here's the Big Papi trivia for you. Now, calm down, relax, it's coming. Okay, so we all know David Ortiz, his career, really, we think of him starting with the Twins and then moving on after the Twins released him. They didn't trade him, released him, and the Red Sox picked him up, and then the rest is Fenway history, so to speak. But before the Twins, did you know that the Seattle Mariners actually were the first team for David Ortiz to play with? So just think that the Mariners in the late 90s could have had David Ortiz, Edgar Martinez. They could have maybe kept Ken Griffey Jr., Randy Johnson. Maybe they could have even kept Alex Rodriguez and signed Ichiro. Look, that's one of the all-time greatest what-ifs. And really, I kind of mashed a bunch of seasons in there for that to happen. But that's a pretty amazing roster if you think of that. All the guys that could have been playing with Big Papi at that time. So there you have it. There's my top 10 most valuable cards from 2001. I don't know that I'm going to be dipping too farther ahead in the 2000s because of the craziness of the values. But The next one we're doing, stick around for that because we're going to be doing the 1984 Tops series. Now, the top 10 cards, you already know the big names from that 1984 set. They rhyme with Schmattingly and Schmrawberry. You know those. But don't forget to go back and check out the 1960 Tops top 10 valuable cards. It's one I did previously. You'll like it. So whatever you do, if you have any of these cards, if you want to get some of these cards, whatever you do, make sure you have a happy hobby.